जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिधरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन नन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यमुनातीरावनचारी तीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. नाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय, जय श्री प्रभात की जय. So welcome all of you to the daily evening Bhagavad Gita class. Today we'll be discussing verse 33 from the third chapter. Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakritir jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakrite jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakritir jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Would anyone like to recite? Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha vanapi prakritir jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. It was a hard verse, hard to recite. What word meanings? Sadrisham, accordingly. You can repeat after me. Sadrisham, accordingly. Cheshtate, tries. Swasyaha, by his own. Prakritehe, modes of nature. Jnanvan, learned. Api, although. Prakritim, nature. Yanti, undergo. Bhutani, all living entities. Nigraha, repression. Kim, what? Karishyati, can do. Translation: even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. For everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Shri Prabhupada ki. Unless one is situated on the transcendental platform of Krishna consciousness, he cannot get free from the influence of the modes of material nature, as it is confirmed by the Lord in the 7th chapter, 7.14. Therefore, even for the most highly educated person on the mundane plane, it is impossible to get out of the entanglement of Maya simply by theoretical knowledge or by separating the soul from the body. There are many so-called spiritualists who outwardly pose as advanced in the science, but inwardly or privately are completely under particular modes of nature, which they are unable to surpass. Academically, one may be very learned, but because of his long association with material nature, he is in bondage. Krishna consciousness helps one to get out of the material entanglement, even though one may be engaged in his prescribed duties in terms of material existence. Therefore, without being fully in Krishna consciousness, one should not give up his occupational duties. No one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so-called yogi or transcendentalist artificially. It is better to be situated in one's position and to try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. Thus, one may be freed from the clutches of Krishna's Maya. Do a short Mangalacharana. Om Agyantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So welcome all of you to our daily evening Bhagavad Gita class. So we are going through the third chapter. We are on the 33rd verse. Bhagavad Gita has, third chapter has total 43 verses. So we'll just see a brief overview of the third chapter to give you some context. So the first chapter, does anyone know what is the title of the first chapter? Does anyone know? What's the first chapter about? Or how many chapters are there in the Bhagavad Gita? 18. Yeah. So there are 18 chapters. Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, and Arjuna was on the battlefield. That is what the first chapter is about. First chapter, the title is Observing the Armies on the Battlefield, or it is also called Arjuna Vishad Yoga, which is Arjuna and Krishna are on the battlefield. There is a description of the battlefield, and both the parties are described. And then Arjuna says to Krishna, please take me to the middle of both the armies, and he wants to see both the armies. He goes to the middle of the both armies and sees on the opposite side such a large army. He sees all his relatives present over there, and that's when he starts getting a doubt whether he really wants to fight or does not want to fight. And he gives a lot of reasons to Krishna why he should not be fighting the war. So that's what happens in the first chapter. So in first chapter, Lord Krishna does not say anything. There's actually only just one verse, in fact half a verse, where Lord Krishna just says, I've brought you to the middle of the battlefield, now see both the armies. That's what Krishna says. Second chapter is the summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Second chapter, in the beginning, Arjuna surrenders to Lord Krishna by saying that I don't know what is the best thing for me. Because Arjuna, imagine the toughest situation in your life, and you are right when you are supposed to be taking an action, and you are getting goosebumps, you are getting butterflies in your stomach. You feel like all of a sudden you are doubting yourself, and you are doubting the very purpose for which you thought you will start doing this. For example, you have your final exams, and just on the day you are thinking, should I even appear for the exam? So that's what Arjuna's situation was like that time. So Arjuna then surrenders to Krishna and says that I don't know what is the best thing I should be doing, please guide me. That's when Krishna starts speaking from the 11th verse onwards in second chapter. And then Krishna, for the next 62 verses, he gives entire philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita in a short form. So he tells a lot of things. And then rest of the Bhagavad Gita is expansion of that, where Arjuna asks follow-up questions and then Krishna explains further. So at the beginning of the third chapter, the chapter starts like this. First chapter, Arjuna asks Krishna that, oh Krishna, you on one hand you are telling me that Buddhi Yoga is better, because Krishna mentions in the second chapter, he says that we should use your intelligence, and he describes again and again a Sthita Pragya, one who is completely stable and stabilized, very peaceful. On the other hand, Krishna is also telling Arjuna why he should fight the war. So Arjuna gets confused. He thinks that on the one hand, Krishna is advocating peace, a peaceful mental attitude. On the other hand, he is telling you should fight. Then what should I be doing? That's what Arjuna asks in the first verse of the third chapter. That should I be fighting or should I not fight? So again, the same thing comes up. So third chapter is titled Karma Yoga, and there are 43 verses. So then Krishna starts off describing that out of these two, like one stage is of renunciation where you don't do anything, you just cultivate knowledge. Other is you actively work. So Krishna says how Karma Yoga is better than Jnana Yoga, because in order to perform Jnana Yoga, you should be on that platform, and nobody is on that platform. You should be completely freed of all vices, which is not possible. And even Karma Yoga is a very high platform. Karma Yoga is you perform duties just for the sake of performing duties. So that means no expectation for results. But that is, from our own life, we know it is very difficult to achieve that stage. No expectation of results, right? We always want something for whatever we do. So from the second section is chapter 10 to 16. So Krishna tells, okay, if somebody is not qualified for Karma Yoga, at least they should be practicing Karma Kanda. So Karma Kanda are like a lot of rituals which are prescribed in the Vedas, which say, okay, you want some result, you perform these rituals and you will get that particular result. Then in the next section, Krishna says, even if somebody is very highly elevated, that they need not perform any action. They should still act just to set an example for everyone else. That is, in our own lives, we see, right, in this world, like a lot of people, they'll just give up everything, not do anything. So, what do we call such people? We call them irresponsible, lazy. They are just escaping their responsibilities in life. So, Krishna tells Arjuna that even if somebody is a very highly qualified person who need not actually act for anything, still he must act according to his occupational duty just to set an example. Then he goes on to describe the differences between Karma Yoga and Karma Kanda. And then finally, we are in this section, the 38 to 35th verses, where Krishna says that just by performing your duty without any expectation for results and dedicating that action to Krishna, how it can actually elevate your consciousness, how it can make you spiritually advanced. So let's come to today's verse. We'll read the translation again. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. So if you see the verse, Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha. Sadrisham means accordingly, cheshtate try swasyaha, by his own prakriti, nature. So who tries to act according to his nature? Even api means even, gyanvan, even a learned person. Prakritim yanti bhutani. Prakritim nature, yanti undergo bhutani. All living entities must act according to their nature. Nigraha kim karishyati. What can repression accomplish? Repression means trying to force yourself not to do something. For example, simple example is I am feeling very thirsty, I want to drink water, but if I force myself not to drink water, that's repression. Or I might have, yes. No, they're different things. Karma Kanda is actually Sakam Karma Yoga. Karma Kanda is where you have desire for the fruits of the result. And Karma Yoga is Nishkam Karma Yoga, where you don't desire the fruits of the results. So Karma Kanda is lower, Karma Yoga is higher than Karma Kanda. So what can repression accomplish? Now, before coming on to the actual meaning of the verse, I think it's important to discuss what does modes of material nature mean. Krishna mentions there that one must, according to one's nature, that one is acquired from the three modes. Does anyone know what are the three modes of material nature? They're listed over there, but goodness, passion, and ignorance. So, in this entire material creation, there are three gunas or qualities which are called the modes of material nature: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And you'll find these three everywhere. How do we get, we can't see them, but we get to know them from their qualities. For example, mode of goodness is when there is a lot of purity, knowledge, somebody is very peaceful. Mode of passion is when there is a lot of activity or passion, unlimited desires. Mode of ignorance is when there's a lot of laziness, ignorance, lack of direction, there is lack of responsibility. Now, these three modes, we feel these qualities acting in us all the time, one or the other. And Krishna says, this comes on in the later chapters, where Krishna describes these modes of material nature in a lot of detail. That comes from the 14th chapter onwards. And Krishna tells that these three modes are always in competition. These three things are always fighting with each other, trying to gain dominance. We feel that in our own lives, right? Sometimes we feel very lazy, and then sometimes we feel, all of a sudden, we don't even understand why. We feel very, very, very passionate. We feel like, oh, I'll, give me anything, I'll do it. And sometimes we feel very peaceful. We feel very content, calm, right? So why does this happen? Because Krishna tells these modes of material nature are always acting on everyone, including me, including everyone sitting here, including everything in this universe. So that if you see in Bhagavad Gita, you'll find a lot of pictures are there in the middle. So one of these pictures is this one. Not sure if everyone has seen that. So this actually represents these three devis, right? These three devis represent the three modes, and these are normal workers. Now these normal workers are so this looks like a puppet show where they are being controlled through this. Similar is the case in everyone's life. These are invisible strings that are there on everyone. Like all of a sudden, let's say right now, if I desire that I want to feel very peaceful, can we just simply desire and feel peaceful? Does that ever happen? Does that ever happen? We can't just desire and say, no, I want to feel very lazy right now. It doesn't happen like that. It's out of our control actually. Practically, we are just driven by these three modes. So the more one is in lack of sense of control is there, the more one is controlled by these three modes of material nature. So that's what Krishna means by everybody is forced to act according to the nature he has acquired. Now all these three are always in competition with each other, but there's always, in general, there is a nature that we have acquired from material nature. That is called our own prakriti. That is our dominant nature. Now, how do we see it in light of what Krishna is telling? There is also this concept of Varnashram institution. So Varna you might have heard, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So those are occupational duties. Like somebody who's a Brahmana is primarily, he's actually completely in the mode of goodness. Mode of passion, there is very little mode of passion and ignorance in a Brahmana's life. Kshatriya is in mode of goodness and passion. There's a lot of activity. Like Kshatriya means what? Fighting war, fighting and all that, right? You require a lot of activity a lot of passion for that. Vaishyas are in mode of passion and ignorance, and Shudras are said to be in mode of ignorance. Now these four Varnas are not according to birth. They are according to one's activities and according to one's own qualities. Krishna describes that later on in the 4th chapter. Now here Krishna is saying that everybody has some disposition. Everybody has some tendency, right? Now, we see even in little children, what do we call little children? Even in our own lives, in our friends' lives, we see like somebody likes reading a lot. And then, you don't have to say you read this book. They'll just pick up a book, they'll see any book, they'll start reading. You place a newspaper in front of them, they'll just start reading. It's like automatic. Similarly, some people you might have seen, they have the nature of, they're very brave. In fact, they don't shy away from any kind of challenge that comes. For example, somebody was telling me the story that they were going in a train and all of a sudden someone came and started fighting, started saying this is my seat, like that. So out of those two people, one person, he didn't want to argue. He just said, okay, fine, which is your seat? But the other person, all of a sudden, he got active. He got like full josh. He became active and he said, no, what's the problem with you? Show me your ticket, like that. And then he was rising up to the challenge. Whereas the other person, he was cool, calm, composed. So the one who was cool, calm, composed, you can say he has a little bit of Brahmana tendency. The other one who was rising to the challenge and becoming passionate automatically. These things happen automatic. We don't have to, this is not forced. So everybody has this innate nature, which we also call the psychophysical nature. Right? In generally, you'll find people will say, you should do what you like to do. So what are they trying to say? They're trying to say things that we are naturally cut out for. We should do those things. That's what even Krishna is saying in this. Now, there's a difference between one's own nature and there are two concepts. Let me explain that. One is Prakriti, which I just explained, which is our psychophysical nature. So, is that clear? Like what Prakriti is, our psychophysical nature. That is like Brahmana tendency is disposition towards intellectual studies. Kshatriya tendency is valiant activities, fighting, war, they like challenges. Vaishya tendency is business. You might find like some people, wherever they go, they'll see a business opportunity. They'll be like, acha, yahan pe sasta mil raha, I can buy it from here, sell it more somewhere else. They see a business opportunity everywhere. So they naturally have that Vaishya tendency. They don't have to go and do a course of how to start your own business or things like that. They can naturally do it. There is one more thing which is often people get confused from this verse, which has led to a lot of misinterpretation of this verse, which is Vasana. So Vasana, does anyone know what Vasana is? But Vasana, okay, those are kinds of Vasanas. But Vasana is actually called impressions. They are the deep impressions on our mind. Uh, so karma, let me explain the law of karma. You might have heard of law of karma, right? Law of karma is for every action there is a reaction that we get. But karma, how does it work? So first of all, there is a desire in the heart in order to do something, maybe something good, maybe something bad. Let's say there is a desire in the heart, I want to steal something from some shop. There's little desire. But immediately the person might not go and steal because he'll be a little afraid that there might be consequences. Then he'll start meditating on that. He'll do some mananam, he'll think about it. The more he thinks about it, the more his desire increases that maybe I should go and do, I should go and do. And then when he's in the right association, or maybe I should say wrong association, when he goes with another friend who's maybe a habitual shoplifter, he says, no, let's do. So he'll go and maybe he'll do shoplifting. He'll do that thievery from the shop. So now what has happened is, he stole something from the shop and he found some taste in it because for free he got something. All of a sudden, then what has happened is that earlier it was just a desire stage. Now it has become a deep impression in the mind. Like some impression is there that if I steal, I don't have to work hard. Simply I'll just get some money, I can get whatever I like. So now that has become a little bit of vasana. Now that vasana leads to even more desire. His desire will increase even more. And then the more he goes on doing this, the more vasana he keeps on accumulating, and the impression on his mind of stealing becomes more and more and more. And leads to what? It leads to becoming a habit. Then it kind of becomes his nature, where he's not able to stop himself from stealing. You might have heard, right? Like a lot of these offenders who do stealing or murder, they go to jail, they are in jail for a long time. They get released from jail, and what do? They do the same thing again. Like there is this concept of bail also. Like on bail, police will release you for some time. Even parole is there, where maybe you get sentence of 15 years, but you showed good conduct, good behavior in the jail. So instead of 15 years, judge will say, okay, you are doing good. Maybe you have become reformed. So let us release you within 7-8 years. They get released, and then they start doing the same thing. There have been many studies on this, like why does this happen in spite of very harsh punishments? Because they have those vasanas in them. They can't stop themselves from doing it. Now here in this verse, many people misinterpret it. They say, what is Krishna saying? Krishna is saying, even a man of knowledge acts according to his nature. What can repression do? So if I feel like stealing, I should steal. That's how people misinterpret. And they say, Bhagavad Gita is giving free license, whatever you want to do, you can do. So we should understand that nature here refers to Prakriti, that is a psychophysical nature. That is like a tendency of doing maybe Brahmana activities, Kshatriya activities, Vaishya activities. It does not refer to these vasanas or immoral desires. How do we know that? Know that? That will come in the next few verses. Now, in this verse, why Krishna is saying all this to Arjuna? We should understand that. Like, all of a sudden, this is a philosophical discussion. Arjuna is asking, should I fight or not fight? How does this answer fit into that? So, in first chapter, Arjuna was saying, I don't want to fight. But he said something else also. Does anyone know? What did Arjuna say? Arjuna said, I don't want to fight. Okay, he will not fight, but what will he do in place of fighting? He'll take sannyas. Very good, yeah. So Arjuna was implying by his words that I want to live a life of forgiveness, peacefulness. I'll take sannyas. I'll just go to the forest, take up the begging profession. Because what do sannyasis do? Sannyasis beg for a living. Kshatriyas don't beg for a living. Kshatriyas rule and Kshatriyas administer taxes. That's how Kshatriya will do anything, but he'll never beg. Arjuna was ready to do that. But what is Arjuna? Arjuna is a Kshatriya. So in Arjuna's context, his psychophysical nature was that of a Kshatriya. But he wanted to repress it for the time being because he's feeling very morose, he's feeling very sad. It happens in our lives also, right? When we think of doing something and then we face some setback and then we become very sad, we become very morose. We are like, let me just give it up. I don't want to do it. नहीं मुझसे नहीं होगा मैं बस छोड़ रहा हूँ. That happens in our lives also. So this same thing happened in Arjuna's life also. It was a temporary thing, but he really wanted to, but it happened at a very crucial moment. The war was about to start. Like he should either, like a decision has to be made. Arjuna wanted to leave his Kshatriya spirit, which is Kshatriya spirit is violent. It is a very violent kind of a profession, right? You are fighting, you are killing, there is blood everywhere. But he wanted to take up the Brahmana's occupation, which is peacefulness and forgiveness. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, even the very learned people also act according to their nature. Then why you want, what can repression accomplish? Why do you want to just leave what is your nature and take up something else? Now this brings a very, very important lesson for in our own lives. The education system that we have, it teaches us a lot of things, right? It teaches us physics, chemistry, mathematics, all very important things. We should know how the world functions. But does it teach us what our psychophysical nature is? No. That is something that we ourselves have to find out. And what happens in 99% of people's lives? Like in today's world, Bangalore, everybody is an IT engineer. But are they cut out to become an IT engineer? We find people are frustrated with their lives. Not just IT engineers, even people who maybe went to some other occupation just because maybe job was available there, whatever. But they might earn money, but they'll not be happy. Like, see, this entire Bhagavad Gita spirituality is about how we can become ultimately happy. That is by becoming spiritual, by taking to spiritual life. Forget spiritual life. Just in this material life, if you just want to live normally, if you want to be happy, you should act according to your own tendency. Because if you are forced to do something that you are not cut out for, then it leads to a lot of frustration, which we see in our own lives, in everybody, our friends' lives, everyone's lives. So we will be happy even if there is less money in something. We will be happy if we are doing something that is according to our own psychophysical natures. That's one important lesson that we can understand from this particular verse. Now coming to how do we get out free from the modes of material nature? Now, Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he is writing, unless one is situated on the transcendental platform of Krishna consciousness, he cannot get free from the influence of the modes of material nature. So this means one should be completely spiritually pure. We are all sadhakas. We are practicing sadhana bhakti. We are not pure yet. We are like little bit, we have started the process, our heart has started getting cleansed, but we are not on the highest platform. So modes of material nature will influence us. And whatever our psychophysical nature is, we will have to act according to that. And Prabhupada says, it is confirmed by the Lord in the 7th chapter, how nobody can get free from the influence of the modes of material nature. 7.14 is this verse. Devehi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. So Krishna says that this Maya, this modes of material nature, Maya and modes of material nature are same thing. Modes of material nature are in Maya, are by the Maya energy of the Lord. This is divine. This is divine energy. This is not something, don't take it cheaply, don't take it lightly. Even though Krishna is the highest, yet Maya is his own energy. Mama Maya Duratyaya. Duratyaya means very difficult. It's very difficult to overcome this. Like whatever is how these modes are acting on us, it's very difficult to surpass that. Mam eva ye prapadyante. Krishna says, one who surrenders unto me. Prapadyante means surrender. Mayam etam tarantite. One who completely surrenders to the Lord. He is able to cross over this Maya. So surrender is the final step. In spiritual life, once we completely surrender to the Lord, that's when we can say we are pure. Till then, it's just partial surrender. Now, Srila Prabhupada is saying, therefore, even for the most educated person on the mundane plane, it is impossible to get out of the entanglement of Maya simply by theoretical knowledge. Now, Gyan Yoga that we just discussed briefly, does anyone know what the Gyan Yoga process is? Okay, before Gyan Yoga, what is yoga? I think that's more important to answer. Yes. Could you speak louder? Yes. So yoga means connection. Connection with what? Krishna. Krishna, a lot of people don't know. So let's just say connection with the divine, with the supreme. Because Gyan yogis, they are actually not trying to connect with Krishna, they are trying to connect with Brahman. Brahman is an aspect of Krishna. So yoga means connecting with a higher reality, connecting with supreme reality, connecting with the absolute truth. So yoga has like different types of yoga are there. Gyan yoga is one of those. So what is Gyan yoga? Does anyone know what is Gyan yoga? You can try, even if you don't know, try guessing. Knowledgeable, okay, yes. Don't believe in God, okay. Okay. Anyone else? With proper knowledge, yes. So I think half answer hai, half answer hai. So we got the full answer. So Gyan Yoga is, they try to cultivate knowledge. Knowledge of what? Knowledge of spirit soul. So everything we see around us, that is matter. This microphone is matter, tables matter, our bodies are matter, everything is matter. We also feel like we are this body. So we feel I am also made of matter. But we are actually spirit soul. So this is theoretical knowledge only. Gyan yogis, they read Upanishads from front to back, back to front, and they try to cultivate this knowledge of what is different from matter. That's why it's called the Neti Neti process. They do a lot of analysis. Okay, what is spirit? There is description in Upanishads. Spirit is something that is not material. It does not have this quality, it does not have that quality. So it's a lot of negation of whatever we see around us. And they try to imagine something. That ultimate absolute truth must be something like that. So Gyan Yoga involves lot of theoretical knowledge. There is no practical action over there. So Prabhupada is saying that simply by theoretical knowledge, just by trying to separate the soul from the body, just trying to understand what is soul, how is it different from body, will not help you get over the material energy. For that, we need to surrender to the Lord. We need to get connected with the Lord instead. And Prabhupada is saying there are many so-called spiritualists who outwardly pose as advanced in the science. They'll pose as sannyasis, they'll pose as big spiritual leaders, but internally they are still controlled by the modes of nature. You go and see their private life, you'll find out. That's why we see so many scandals that keep coming out. So that's why Krishna is saying it is, instead of just artificially giving up everything, we should engage ourselves in positive service of the Lord. So what does this mean for sadhana bhaktas like us? So in Krishna consciousness, there are so many services we can perform. Right? We can do archana of the Lord, we can do puja, we can read the scriptures. Just reading scriptures, Krishna says, you worship one who reads Bhagavad Gita, that comes in 18th chapter, I think 67th or 68th verse, I don't remember. Krishna says, one who reads this, studies this divine conversation of ours, worships me by his intelligence. Similarly, we can dress the deities, we can give lectures, we can preach to our friends, we can hear lectures, we can chant, we can dance, we can do kirtan. There are like so many things, and there are so many services, right? We can run the temple, we can sweep in the temple. Practically everything, whatever we are doing for Krishna, it's a service that we are doing. This is called devotional service. So even in devotional service, if we try to do those services which are according to our psychophysical nature, we'll be very happy and we'll be able to perform those services to the best of our ability, to the best of our capacity. Oftentimes people think that, if I want to please Lord, I should try to do something which I don't like, which is true, we should try to do, but at the same time, we should also, whatever, according to our psychophysical nature, Krishna wants to see us happy. So we should engage more in those services which are according to our psychophysical nature. And in general, even in our life also, our occupations, if it is aligned with what our nature is, we'll be more happy. Now, coming to the misinterpretation that I spoke about here, that is one more lesson that we learn from this verse. Context is very critical, especially in today's age. We find in WhatsApp, there are so many viral videos, right? Viral videos will be like just some 10-second clipping of someone who said something. Okay, he might have said a lot of things before that. He might have said a lot of things after that 10 seconds. But some controversial thing that he said in those 10 seconds just make a clip out of that, circulate. What happens? Riots happen. Like people just get incited for no reason. How can he say like this? How can he say like that? Like a lot of so. It happens with everyone. Whoever becomes famous, they'll just cut out one clipping, one wrong thing he might have said. Not even wrong, that might have been correct. But you should see the context in which it was said, right? You should understand. Similarly, whenever somebody comes to us and says, in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita says we can do whatever we want. And Bhagavad Gita verse 3.33 also they'll say, Krishna is saying that Kim Karashyati, what can repression accomplish? So Krishna only is saying we should do whatever you want to do. But cherry picking should not be encouraged, and we should actually study the context in which it was spoken. In fact, just the next verse out after this 3.34, Krishna says in that there is we develop attachment and aversion. There are a lot of regulations that are there that one must follow. Then there is an entire section later on in the last section of this chapter where Arjuna asks that why. So till now, in fact, Arjuna has the same doubt. Krishna is talking about nature and all of that, right? Arjuna says, by what impels one to do things that one should not be doing? Like I was giving the example of stealing, right? Similarly, there are so many other examples where things which are not beneficial for us, which are immoral, but one is still forced to do that. We can see it in our own lives. There are many bad habits that all of us have. We try to give up that bad habit, but still we are not able to. We are sort of forced to do that. Arjuna asks Krishna, why is one forced to do that? And Krishna tells it is lust only. And he says, lust, we generally understand it in the context of sexual relationships, but lust in general in Bhagavad Gita is kam. Kam means very strong desire for something material. That is actually lust. And Krishna explains that in 3.36 to 43rd verse onwards. We'll cover it in the coming days. But the point to be taken here is Krishna tells there also that we have to control our senses. We cannot just simply whatever we feel like doing, we should not do. So there is a difference between Prakriti and Vasna. So Prakriti is what is being talked about in this verse. That we should understand. So yeah, these are the two lessons that don't take things out of context. Context is critical. And also in our own life, how we can apply this verse, what Krishna is saying, like taking up more of those things that are in line with our psychophysical nature. So if we like reading, we should take up some reading services, studying services. If we like some physical seva, then we should take up those kind of things. So, okay. I'll end here. We're on time. Thank you very much. So, does anyone have any questions or comments? So, thank you very much. Just one parting note is, I spoke about the modes of material nature and how everybody is controlled by these modes and how helplessly actually we're forced to act. But when we take to the process of Krishna consciousness is very simple. We chant Krishna's names, we do kirtan, we dance, we take prasadam, we first offer food to Krishna, then have it. That is called prasadam. By doing this, just by doing this simple process, it elevates us, it elevates our consciousness. We can see the practical result in our lives, and we will see things that we were forced to do earlier. Even I'm talking about even the vasanas. We're able to overcome that. The modes of material nature stop acting very forcefully in our lives. You will find this in so many devotees' lives. That before coming to Krishna consciousness, somebody was very addicted to maybe smoking, but once or something else. Once they took up this process, and then they were very easily able to leave it. In fact, smoking, some great person, so-called great person, some actor, he once said, quitting smoking is generally considered to be very hard. He said, quitting smoking is very easy. I have done it dozens of times myself. Like, what does that mean? That one can not quit. It's very difficult. So that's just an example to show that how deep the vasanas can be, how deep the effects of the modes of material nature can be. That's why often you will find in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada will keep saying, entangled in the modes of material nature. So that entanglement is like all these habits that we have built in our life, not just this life, from many, many lives these vasanas carry on. So to overcome that, when we take up to the process of Krishna consciousness, it becomes very easy, because then we start getting purified and our consciousness starts getting elevated. So it's a very practical process that works for me. Yes, Prabhu? Yes. Uh, so, yes, exactly. So in fact, these six things, they're called the six anarthas. Does anyone know what are the six anarthas? Anartha means something which is not desirable. Like artha means what? Artha means, generally it is referred to as wealth. It actually means something that is desirable. Anartha is something that is not desirable. What is not desirable? Those are those six qualities, those six sisters, which is lust, anger, pride, greed, illusion, and envy. So these are, even in Christianity, you might have heard of the seven sins they have in Bible. Seven sins one must avoid. Seven sins are like gluttony, greed, anger, envy. Those things come there also. So these six things are there in everyone. These are contaminations that are there in our heart. And they are there because we have been cultivating them since so many lifetimes. So Krishna tells how we can overcome these. He tells from that 36th verse to 43rd verse. He takes the specific example of lust, but that applies for all the other things. So when we come to spiritual life, if we have tendency of becoming very angry, so immediately the first day we start chanting, we would still continue to become angry. Spiritual life is not an overnight thing. It's a gradual process. It takes time. But over the course of, we go on chanting, after some few months, few years, we'll see the difference in ourselves. Our tendency to get angry for no reason will reduce. We'll go on reducing. Till it will come to a point, it will be in our control. And we'll be able to use anger for the right purpose. So it is also said that these things, we can actually try to channel them and use them for Krishna service. So classic example is of Hanumanji. Does anyone know the pastime how Hanumanji used anger? So Hanumanji is a completely self-realized soul. He was directly serving Lord Ram. But Hanumanji also got angry. When? In Lanka. What happened? Can you please tell? Yes. Correct. So when Hanuman went to Ravan, so what did Hanuman tell Ravan? Please give back Mother Sita, otherwise Lord Ram will come. So Ravan said, no, I will not give. And then what did Ravan do? He tied him up and then lit his tail. So Hanumanji got very angry that time. But the anger was in his control. And he used the anger. How did he use the anger? He destroyed Lanka. Like by just lighting him. So similarly, even Arjuna, when he was on the battlefield, he wasn't just happy, smiling and shooting arrows. Arjuna was very angry. In fact, even if you see in Bhagavad Gita also, it is there in those photos. You will see Krishna is also very angry. He is lifting the wheel and he is going towards Karna. So anger can be spiritual. Anger can be used in Krishna's service. So all these things can be used. But in the material sense, so spiritual is when we do something for Krishna, material is when we do it for ourselves. So if we are getting angry for our own sake, then we can understand it's a material thing. And how do we get over it? By practicing our sadhana properly. Yes, Prabhu. Not necessary. So one is, everybody by default is in some mode. But one who follows sincerely, mode of goodness, he will cultivate more mode of goodness in his life. So what are the Krishna conscious activities? You get up early in the morning. Getting up early is an activity in the mode of goodness. You attend Mangal Aarti in the morning. So immediately you get up and you see Aarti happening. That gives so much positive impressions. Morning time is Brahma Murta time. You chant during that time. That's mode of goodness again. So during the day, then you go to your work and all that. But other modes would also act on him. But he will go on becoming more and more in mode of goodness. So Krishna says that mode of goodness, one should try to come to mode of goodness because mode of goodness is conducive for spiritual life. So all the things that we practice, they become very easy when you do it in mode of goodness. Now for practicing devotees, as I said, immediately you start practicing, you won't completely all of a sudden come into mode of goodness. It takes some time. And then ultimately, when you become more and more pure, then there is something even beyond these three modes. That is called the Shuddha Sattva state. That is pure mode of goodness, transcendental mode of goodness. When you start coming in touch with Krishna, when you can feel Krishna's presence in your heart, when you see deity, you won't see some statue. You'll actually see Krishna standing in front of you. So that is when you develop the highest perfectional stage of love of God. That is beyond mode of goodness. That is ultimately, mode of goodness is also a rope. See, here you'll see, all these three Devis, they have ropes. Even mode of goodness also binds you to this world. Does someone know any example? Prabhupada says that mode of goodness conditions you to happiness. You'll find a lot of people, they don't follow spiritual life. They'll be very peaceful, very calm, very happy, very content in their life. They don't want money. They just simply, whatever they have, they're happy in that. So that's a very good stage, but we have to go even beyond that. That is, they're bound. So these another meaning of guna is rope. So these modes of nature are also like ropes that bind us to this material world. So somebody who's just in mode of goodness and not following spiritual life, they'll continue to stay in this world. They'll keep on getting good and good births. So if they are in mode of goodness, one goes to the planets of the demigods. One might even take birth as a demigod. Like even these Indra, Chandra, Varuna, all of these demigods are living entities. They are just like us. So it is even in fact mentioned in the scriptures that one who performs, if you have those qualifications, like one who performs 100 Ashwamedh Yagyas, he becomes qualified to occupy the post of Indra. That's why you'll find so many stories. Whenever somebody does Ashwamedha Yagya, Indra will send some Apsara just to disturb them. He'll just try to disturb that so that nobody can occupy his post. But they are also living entities. Krishna is not a living entity like us. Krishna is God. Whereas all the others who are there in this material world, including the demigods, are living entities. They are in mode of goodness. These earthly planets are primarily in the mode of passion, and the lower planets are primarily in the mode of ignorance, like hellish planets and all those. So, yes, Paul. Shuddha Sattva, yes. Yes. So all the pure devotees of the Lord, they are in Shuddha Sattva state. Even we, when we practice sincerely, we also can feel that Shuddha Sattva sometimes. Not all the times, because we need to go on practicing more and more. But all the pure devotees of the Lord, they are in Shuddha Sattva state. Yes. Yeah, all the acharyas, they're all pure devotees of the Lord. So whomever you see in the altar, they're all pure devotees. Yes, bro. Hare Krishna.
Sorry, I came quick in between the class,
Ah.
and one thing that you told is don't look at shorter clips and do misinterpretations. So we can't misinterpret it. But I have a question regarding anger.
Ah.
So I heard that in some instances you're saying don't repress, and then in some instances you're saying that we have to not not become angry or not
Correct,
not
correct. Yeah.
lose too much.
Yes.
So when we become angry, what should we do? Should we express or repress?
No, see, ultimately, if you try to, if you express anger,
Our natural tendency is to express.
correct, yeah. So let's consider both the cases. If you repress anger, then what happens? We harm ourselves. That happens, right? No. If we repress anger, if you try to repress it, at least in the short term, we harm ourselves. We contain it in ourselves, and then that maybe we just store it somewhere inside. Then we get angry, we harm ourselves even in the sense we keep on repressing, we keep on storing inside. Then what happens? One day it just blasts and then goes to whomever we see, we just shoot them with our anger. But if we are getting angry, if we express on the other person, then what happens? We hurt the other person, right? So what should we do? Should we repress or express? Very nice question. Anyone would like to answer this or any thoughts on this?
I mean, sorry, can I correct the question?
Yes.
So when you say should, then it's again, there's something, some compulsive element to it.
Ah.
So,
Or let me say, what should be the right approach? Is that the question? What would be the right way to deal with
I
it?
would put the question as, what do you think is a better approach?
Okay. What do I think or what does Bhagavad Gita
What
think?
do people think?
What do people think? Okay. Well, you go to people.
You should.
Okay.
That's my.
Right. Different people have different approaches to this. So let me clear a few things. When I was talking about depression, that was specifically in context of this verse that when Krishna is saying that even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. So we explained that nature, ultimately there are two things. One is Prakriti, that is our psychophysical nature. And there is also that Vasana, which is immoral desire, which could be this lust, anger, pride and all that. So in this context where Krishna is saying that he is referring to our psychophysical nature. Let's say if somebody has a Brahmana tendency, he should act according to that and not repress that tendency. But when it comes, so that is where repression is talked about here. Now, coming to your question of what should we do, or not should, in fact, what would be the right way, or what could one do when one is affected by these things? So, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says ultimately we have to control the senses, we have to regulate all these things. So, one thing is repression means you just think of it this way: there's a small child, and the small child is hell bent upon doing something. Maybe he just wants to, you know, it happened the other day. I was seeing Sunday feast was going on. One small child came, there were flowers kept there. He started picking up all the flowers, started putting them in another place. He was going on doing that. There was a lecture going on. Everybody was getting disturbed. So one way is you repress the child, just catch hold of his arms, tie him up, and then maybe take him somewhere else. He'll cry a lot, and then you'll maybe throw even a tantrum. Right way is we should channel that energy. We should try to, again, I'm using the word should, take it in the right spirit. But one way is regulate that and channelize that. Give the child a better engagement. Better engagement in the sense, okay, he wants to pick up flowers, maybe have flowers in some other place where he does not disturb. So similarly, if somebody is getting a lot of anger, one thing is in the short term, how should we deal with it? There are so many techniques. Some people say, count till 10 or something, so that you don't repress it also, you don't or try to distract your mind. But ultimately, we have to follow Krishna's words, where that'll come in the later section. That is overcoming lust and these other 6 anarthas. That comes from 36 to 43rd verse, where Krishna explains why do all these anarthas come, which force us to act in a way that we don't want to act, and ultimately what is the long term solution to that. That is, ultimately we have to purify these anarthas that I was talking about when we perform sadhana bhakti, or for that matter any bona fide spiritual process. So bhakti is something that is like an elevator that acts very fast. When we do that, these anarthas, these tendencies to become angry, ultimately all of these are vasanas that have come about because of our own actions in the past. They start getting cleared from the mind, and our consciousness start getting more pure and pure, and over a period of time these tendencies go away.
Consciousness should be cleared. It might take 50 to 100 years.
Yeah, it could take many lifetimes also, but in the meantime we have to try to regulate that. Yeah. So regulating in the sense trying to channel it. Now practically we'll have to see it on a practical case to case basis. What do we do right in that moment? Let's say somebody is really getting angry. It could depend on finding out the root causes why somebody tends to get angry. If somebody is seeing that cause going to appear, maybe excuse yourself. I don't know. When I was small, this movie had come, Munna Bhai MBPS. So that person had anger problem, and then he would just start laughing. Maybe that's one trick. Just start laughing or something like that. But yeah. So philosophically, here repression is being talked about in terms of Krishna is telling Arjuna does not want to fight, he wants to leave the battlefield and take up the occupation of a Brahmana. Krishna is saying that repressing your own nature will not help you. You will ultimately be forced to fight. So fight this war. Anyways, so we'll end here. It's getting late. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Bhagavad Gita ki Jai.